Welcome to another episode of Cognitive Dissidents. This is Monica Perez from The Monica Perez Show.
I'm Parallel Mike of the Parallel Systems Broadcast and Parallel Mike Podcast.
And Hrvoje from the Geopolitics and Empire Podcast.
So we're all coming from different, physical points of view. I'm in the U.S. Hrvoje is in Mexico at the moment. Mike is in an undisclosed location, but not in the U.S. But I got to tell you, stuff in the U.S. has been bothering me a lot. I hate politics, but you got to keep track of these things because the steady march towards tyranny continues. And it's really bothering me because there's a polarization here where the people who hate Trump are focusing on Trump as the problem, and the people who love Trump are focusing on Trump as the solution. But there are specific things that are happening in the U.S. that are real threats to the Constitution. They're violating the Constitution. And the way I see the U.S. Constitution is it's the thin parchment line between humanity and world tyranny. I feel like if we lost our gun rights, for example, every other government in the world would be empowered to put that boot on the neck forever because they don't have to worry about the U.S. being subdued. We would be subdued. So before I go on a rant about what's happening here, do you guys think that's fair, or you think that's too America-centric? What do you think?
Just real quick on that note, here in Mexico, the Sheinbaum government, one of the news this week is, so the Sheinbaum government in Mexico is seizing firearms at twice the rate of the previous AMLO administration, which is not good. And I was having a conversation with, some Mexican fellow Christians from church that I love, but I'm telling them about guns, and they've just been so brainwashed. It's unbelievable. Virtually most Mexicans oppose guns. And I tell them, look, the criminals have free reign. The police don't defend you. We're on our own. If we had legal gun ownership, that would equalize things, and the criminals would be coming after us less. But I've interviewed the guy who left Venezuela, Emmanuel Rincon. He's got a big following. I think he lives in the U.S. now in Florida. He said he's got a big following, and he said it's a Latin American thing. It's ingrained deep in the culture. This collectivism, these decades of socialism, Marxism, communism. And anyways, I think that this just bolsters your point that
yeah, there's a total gun ban in Mexico, and they have tens of thousands of murders every year. I mean, it's not more obvious than that. But the way I've been looking at it is, and I know Mike has some stuff on this too, in the Wall Street Journal, every day, the South American, Central American countries are in the news. Mexico, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela. I feel like they're, ever since actually the beginning of Biden's reign, but now with Rubio as the Secretary of State, I feel like there's this regional hegemony thing underway. And that's a big thing I want to talk about later in the show. But also, Mike, do you think that what happens here it has an impact on the rest of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all have noticed that over the last 3 to 4 years, that the narratives seem to feed out from the US and they spread to the rest of the empire. And I do call it an empire. And, even the assassination narratives, don't forget there was Roberto Fico in Europe. It's almost like the US is like the main stage and we're all the kind of side stages at a festival. So we get the narratives eventually. Stable coins, for example, they began in the US. I know we're going to talk about them later, but now they're speaking about them in Great Britain too. So yeah, that's the way it's working.
I agree with you that there's this theme that's going, even to the point of Boris Johnson's hair. And Milei's hair, he talked about his hair as my sister thought it would be a great campaign thing to have crazy hair. So it's like Trump, all these guys, that's their hair. But Milei, is it Milei? How do you pronounce it? Yeah. So
Mileikovsky?
The guy in Argentina. So that I totally think it's very libertarian, has a total American stamp on it. That guy Fico, I forgot all about that. And it was just in the paper today, the person who allegedly shot him, got 20 years. And, just you see that kind of thing. Like there's no trial, or maybe there was a trial, but like you don't see anything. It's just a little one paragraph thing. I didn't even think that was real. I think we all bonded on some of that. The stuff isn't real. But yeah, I do think that someone asked me the other day who knew I was an anarcho-capitalist, are you still an anarcho-capitalist? And I said, I don't think that's going to work right now because world government is descending upon us. And he said, well, do you believe in the nation state? And my answer was, if only to defend the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Like, that's it. Like, I don't need an ethnic state at all. I think the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is our last thin grasp on the, whatever, classical liberalism, Enlightenment era values. It's not perfect. I prefer the Articles of Confederation. And as Lysander Spooner says, what it is what got us here. But the thing that I'm worried about right now is that, and I hate to even say like Trump is doing this because he is obviously the idea of having a national police force or violating, taking away that states' rights, the subsidiarity that is also an element of separation of powers for this country, not just like the three branches of government. That's been on the horizon, really an active operation ever since defund the police. I was like, this is leading to a national police force. So I have a little more to say about that. I don't know if you guys have feelings about where I'm going with this.
I think the tyranny I've said long ago that we have one party, like in 1984, in virtually every country. It's one party, it's left, right, and anyone that that you talk to, whether it's people on the street, friends, families, neighbors, our online friends that don't see it, it's getting, the hour is late. Like the hour is way too late to be talking about partisan politics, left or right. There's one party, it's left and right, and it's two-pronged installation of totalitarianism.
Yeah, it's left and right boots walking towards the same end. And the way that I always try and pitch it to people who are trying to convince me that, no, you just don't get it, Mike. This is good for us. I'm like, it's not good for anyone. If you look at the opposite side, your political or ideological opposition or enemy, and what's happening now, but they was doing it would be terrible, awful, and you'd rally against it, then it's not good for you. If it's not good for the goose, it's not good for the gander, as we say. So with all of the stuff that's happening under Trump, the stable coins, the surveillance, the use of predator drones to surveil the ICE protests, it's like, great, yeah, you might not like those people in that protest, but what about when it's the other way around? What about when the next, president gets in who was on
Newsom.
the opposite side?
Newsom.
It's really simple.
And I highlighted in numerous articles today, actually in one of the articles, it said it's really important for the administration to frame what they're doing in terms that MAGA people can understand and support. And the subtext was, so when you're going to march the military into cities, make sure it's about deportations and law and order. Make it a MAGA thing. When you're hitting Venezuelan fishing boats or whatever, Colombian fishing boats, make sure you talk about narco-terrorism because those are MAGA people will support that as opposed to, whatever, human rights or something the left might support. But so what they're doing right now is they're marching into these cities that I think they quote, National Guard has been deployed. I know it was like DC, Los Angeles, Portland, Chicago. I think they went into Memphis. They certainly said they were going into Memphis. And what I've noticed with all of this is in every case, they're trying to make an argument that it's an exception to posse comitatus. And for people who aren't raised in the US, that's a touchstone of the right. It's or a constitutionalist even, you're not allowed to use the military domestically. It's completely for the foreign, for defense under rare, very specific circumstances, such as if there are constitutional rights being violated in a state and the government of that state cannot or will not protect those specific constitutional rights, the government can go in. if the government of the state asks for help, and I think the president has to say, we order you out of that area that this governor is talking about, or we're going to come in. And then I think actual insurrection. So they've thrown around insurrection, but everything they're doing is kind of meant to be a little bit of incrementalism. They're trying to make excuses for it. Okay, it's a federal agent on federal property, federal law, ICE, DC is a federal district. Everything has some arguable element. But the bottom line is they're pushing the envelope with getting the National Guard or whatever military in there. And in my opinion, the main goal of that is to get, I actually don't think they're going to have an overt national police force. I think the goal, both from the states and the feds and international, is interoperability. So they are infiltrating and cooperating with all the subordinate police departments and everything. And this came out of the fake assassination attempt on July 13th, 2024. They said one of the recommendations that came out of the aftermath of that was, we want Secret Service in every place so that they can train and work with the police in case anyone ever goes there to whatever town it is. And it can't just be right before. It has to be a permanent presence. And if they're talking about a place as small as Bishop, then they're talking about everywhere. And the Capitol Police has outposts and everything. So I think that's what they're doing. And, but I'm also alerted to that kind of thing when I hear that they're interoperating with Mexican military. Have you ever heard that, Hrvoje? They have joint exercises.
I mean, they've always had that to an extent. Many countries around the world, whether it's the East countries or the West, have these joint. In the U.S. and Mexico, you've had Plan Merida. So you've always had exercises where Mexican military, or you've got different agency of the USDA or whatever, openly having these things, but increasingly it seems to be more so. Yeah.
So just a couple of more items on that, and then we can move on. I just want people to understand why it's such a problem to not have that layers of policing, and it's because the question is who's watching the watchers, and there are numerous examples, many times, where the local cops will be alerted by local people as to something really bad happening. And the best example, I think, is Denny Hestert. I imagine you guys are all familiar with that because Isabel Edmonds did so much work on it. He was a Speaker of the House. You never hear his name mentioned, but he was a Speaker of the House. He had an apartment set up where I think this is like proven. He had boys brought in from other countries, Thailand or something, and the FBI was monitoring the apartment. But neighbors saw what the hell was going on. They called the cops, and the cops put an end to it, and it brought Denny Hestert down, if I understand the story correctly. But I've heard numerous other stories about the local cops being alerted to something really bad happening and stopping it. But you really can have a national or world dictator if they have their own police force, and you cannot defend the actual rights and physical integrity of the people in there. So you can't have the army running everything. And then just two crazy things about this situation. The one in Portland specifically, it's called Operation Inflation, and they're wearing inflatable costumes. So you have people walking around in Barney costumes and everything. And one judge who wanted to stop the federal troops from coming in said, it's ridiculous or it's absurd for you to think that people in Barney costumes are a real threat. Meanwhile, the other judge said, yeah, but they're throwing M80s at cops. I'm not a law and order type. This is all bullshit, but they're setting it up. The conflict is intended to keep us against each other, and then, to make it us versus us, and instead of us versus them. And then the final item on that is the people who are featured, quoted in all the articles I've read are like 40-something-year-old soccer moms and stuff. And the funders of this No Kings thing, it's like a list of 100, unions and all that. And I'm thinking, why are unions and liberal soccer moms defending what in another age they would have described as slave labor? These are people who are being imported to avoid things like minimum wage, healthcare costs, all of the things that these guys fight for that screw up our labor market. They're defending these people. And to me, who's benefiting from that? It lowers the wages. And obviously, when you really look into it, it's like George Soros, Open Society, as whatever George Soros even means anymore. But that's the massive faction that's supporting all of this. But to me, the biggest thing that's going to come out of it is a de facto national police force.
Yes, and I don't know if I put together some. I'm just going to share my screen real quick again. Sources related to the U.S. stuff, and I mean just what we were talking about before, the one party. And here's Washington Post publishing an article. As a professor, I've seen woke and MAGA censorship. Which is worse? Of course, here he's going to say MAGA, but the fact that they're recognizing this is just a little bit that this left woke libtard is revealing that, okay, yes, there's censorship from the left and the right, but the right is worse. So he got a few steps there. But anyways, just the fact that this is being discussed now, and then ICE boosts its weapons spending 700%. And it's interesting that it says it was spent on guns and armor, but also purchases of chemical weapons and guided missile warheads and explosive components. It's like, what? And then you've got, okay, this is the left wing. I like making fun of the left and the right. Okay, this is Daily Beast, and it says Ice Barbie, right? Kristi Noem of the DHS. DHS shouldn't even exist. It's a Nazi, agency. And, splurging $172 million taxpayer money on 2 DHS jets. And then you've got Trump yet again holding another corporate ballroom donor thing with Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, Meta, Google, Amazon, Palantir. It's one big club, and we're not in it, left or right. Trump's trying to oust Thomas Massie now. He's supporting Ed Galrain to oust Massie. It's like, what? That's so anti-American. And now he wants to build the Arc de Trump. And it's like, what? I mean, these are just examples of it's all madness. And for the conservatives, look, I'm a Christian, I'm a conservative, but I'm recognizing that this has nothing to do with this is megalomania, this is globalism, this is New World Order. And just one more, Tucker with Bannon. And Bannon here is and you see, like, he's part of some operation, in my opinion. Bannon. He is.
Definitely.
I met an old Mexican scientist who participated, I've said this before, in the what's that dome? They made that movie with Pauly Shore. You guys know what I'm talking about. In the 90s, that they had this experiment somewhere in the American Southwest, like Arizona, New Mexico, where they built this dome to mimic life on Mars.
Biodome?
Yeah, biodome. And it was a real thing. And this Mexican scientist told me when they shut it down, Steve Bannon was sent to the actual biodome to inform them, and he was doing it on the behest of Rockefeller. So this guy's got skeletons in his closets. But the fact is, this is suspicious that he's egging on. So Tucker's amplifying the narrative of Civil War. Bannon is, and I'm not going to play the clip. It's here, but Bannon says America's on the brink of a civil war, saying the divide between the two parties has become impossible to bridge. So I think it's part of that occult globalist agenda is to stoke civil war. So yeah, that's all I've got.
Bannon's definitely a deep state guy. He was some kind of naval attaché. He was involved in Carter's failed attempt to free the Iranian hostages. And then he ends up at the Reagan inauguration shortly thereafter, if I recall it correctly. I'm looking it up in Wiki, and it's surprisingly not in Wiki, but Bannon is defo deep state or whatever, deep whatever.
Yeah, just to pick up on some of those things. I was reading a Reuters article talking about the surveillance that's being used on the No Kings protesters. And I mentioned before, it involves military grade drones that used to be used to spot and kill enemies in combat zones, hacking protesters' phones, facial recognition, cell site simulators. And basically, the problem the US has is when these things are being rolled out, firstly, it's normalizing it. So again, it doesn't matter, the police who are using this, because it's not just military tech, it's police that are incorporating this. They're going to be using that across the board. They don't say, oh, we're only using it at the ICE protests. It's like, no, we'll use it across the board anyways. And the second thing is there's not really much legislation. And what did exist has pretty much been destroyed. Like it's been dismantled. So that's the big worry, is that these things are going to end up just a normal part of our lives, irrespective of whether you're on the left or the right or anything else, within a very short space of time. But the support of it by people on the right and the lack of recognition for what's happening in terms of their freedoms and their constitutional rights, that's even more scary. The technology isn't the scary part, it's the acquiescence of people to it because it ticks an ideological box for them. And the other thing that I wanted to just draw out on that is you mentioned about the Civil War narrative. That's also now made its way to the UK too, which I expected, but just to further that idea that what's happening in the US is spreading to, other places as well. And yeah, it does feel almost coordinated when you see that. You see the same things popping up in different countries, different languages, different cultures. And I mean, I guess you see a lot of that, Hrvoje, because you've got your kind of fingers in a few pies because you go back to Croatia. So did you notice anything there that's standing out as something from the US?
No, Croatia's kind of like, isolated, siloed. It's its own, where it's super tiny country. And so in that regard to all of this, it's kind of like things are going on as usual in Croatia. But as you mentioned, it's the Anglo-American establishment, right? So UK, US,
Israel.
And that agenda is
it's definitely a triangle.
Right. But in terms of the Civil War stuff, US, UK. And again, it's interesting that in the UK, David something or other is his name, started popping up, some professor in the UK, popping up on these podcasts, Unheard and elsewhere over the past, year, talking about there's going to be a civil war in UK. And so you're wondering, like, was he doing it intentionally? Was he put up to do it? Or, was he just incentivized?
David Betts.
Yes. And so again, it's convenient because again, I've said before, they have this agenda. They're behind on many things, and they need catalysts, pretexts to accelerate. And basically, most of the big, deep events, everything, big events are manufactured, right? That's most terror events. It's state terrorism. People don't get it. It's state terrorism. So whatever terror event, it's state terrorism mostly, and then the health events, the climate events, the wars, it's all manufactured to bring in one world totalitarian government. So anyways.
Well, I said in a recent article, prepare for the Civil War simulation, because it's going to, in the screens, you can make anything appear like anything. And people, like with COVID, will be watching these screens and be like, oh my God, we've got these people fighting these people. And there'll be events, of course, that happen. But yeah, will you go outside and see a civil war? No, but we didn't go outside and see a pandemic. Yeah. We saw people acting as though there was a pandemic. And you could easily do the same with this civil war idea. And again, it's kind of predictable in a sense.
Agreed on the fact that they're really just ushering this stuff in under one pretext or another. It's not, it's a plan that never changes. We march ever. I love the left and right boots marching forward. And you said like it ticks an ideological box. I would say it's more because we have ideologies. It's completely post ideological. Like it's not communist or capitalist or anything. The boxes that are being checked are are teams. Like they're not even identities. Like lots of black guys called on my show, my radio show in Atlanta, loving Trump. Like it's really it's a team, and you just believe in your coach. You love him, and you'll do whatever he says. And you think it's literally every article I read just ends with, because Trump said MAGA, Trump said for America. And I'm like, but this is not for America. This is like generating fees for some bank. Like, why? How is that for America?
Yes.
So, Hrvoje, did you have other Trump stuff? Did you?
No, that's about it.
That's
yeah,
it.
So
I wanted to talk about, it has to go under the banner of Trump because he is the guy who's putting his face on it. And I will say over and over again, like, he's an actor. Maybe he believes this stuff. I don't know, but he is not sitting around wondering what to do, thinking, I think I'll bomb some ships in the Caribbean because drugs, if you, and it's not like an American policy either, because the drug problem that's really killing people. And I believe it because my sister died of it, is fentanyl. And I had my cousin's son also died, not even 30 years old, died. So, and it's fentanyl, it's too strong. And so when Colombia does not import, Colombia is not a producer of fentanyl. Fentanyl is a big pharma thing. So when you crack down on good, solid, pure Coke from Colombia, you're encouraging the use of fentanyl in U.S. drugs. So there's no logical reason to save American lives like Trump is claiming, to bomb boats full of high quality cocaine. But he's doing it, and they're doing it because, so they're bombing, they've hit some boats in the Caribbean. They say they're Venezuelan narco trafficking, whatever. I wonder if Venezuela even does any narco stuff, given that they're an oil producing nation and they have other commodities. But so they're hitting these places. They're killing people. I think 30 people plus have died. Colombia said like some fisherman was killed. And it's extrajudicial. It's absolutely murder. There's no process there. There's no reason for it. I believe it's in Venezuelan territorial waters. Bad, bad, bad. It is not about narco anything. It's about regime change in Venezuela. And given the kind of mobilization that's coming from like secret elite squads to bombers moving towards Venezuela, I think there's an actual chance that the U.S. is going to invade Venezuela, because they're saying Rubio is turning up the pressure in the hopes that Maduro steps down. Everybody knows Maduro is never stepping down. He is never capitulating to the pressure. You have to, if they want him out, they are going to have to physically remove him. And I'm afraid that's what they're trying to gear us up to do.
Well, how's this sound for a potential invasion? The U.S. has got 10,000 troops, 8 warships, a nuclear-powered fast attack submarine, F-35 fighter jets, and B-52 bombers, all now in the Caribbean.
I didn't know about the troops, because that
I don't think that's for little drug boats.
Yeah, and the other stuff could be show force, burn, blow the dust out of the engines. But if you're actually putting 10,000 people there, and with how efficient they are now, that's an invasion force to me.
I just said a thought.
Sorry, Hrvoje, just one final thing. What we do know is that Venezuela has the largest proven known oil reserves in the world, which surely hasn't escaped America as
in
they're
the
seeking.
World. It's in one of the Wall Street Journal articles. Trump said, it would be great for our economy if we get our hands on that oil. Like, there's some quote just like that today. I'm like, this is not, ugh. Anyway, sorry, boy.
What if those troops and ships are for Cuba? So I think we have to have, what I do is I listen to a broad array of sources, even boots on the ground, folks, Mexicans in my church who come from different backgrounds and know things. I was listening to Max Blumenthal's Gray Zone interview yesterday, where he interviewed one of the U.S. Special Forces guys who was involved in this regime change attempt on Maduro. And it was a confusing interview because it was kind of convoluted, the guy's responses, and it wasn't as clear. Maybe he didn't want to reveal too much. And Max would ask him, like, so you were part of the regime change attempt? He's like, no. it's kind of weird, but he was saying that they were working with 60 American guys or something, that so the regime change would take place by Venezuelan traders themselves, generals or whoever, who are bought off. So they would do the coup. It would be Venezuelans doing an internal coup, assisted from the outside, and then they bring in these advisors, these American advisors, to the new regime to sort of make everything hunky dory. But my point, real quick, is if we see action in Latin America and the Western Hemisphere, military action, yeah, as you guys say, it looks like it can be Venezuela, Cuba. The situation is deteriorating incredibly in Cuba, and I could see Washington just like, knocking that pawn over and taking Cuba and Mexico. Some Mexicans say Scheinbaum, Trump has got Mexico by the balls, so to speak. And so they just tell Scheinbaum to do something, take care of this or that cartel, and Scheinbaum does it. So
Obviously.
effectively, they're already managing Mexico.
They have Ecuador.
That's clear. And Scheinbaum just met with Larry Fink of BlackRock and Boris Brenda of World Economic Forum the other week. So they're, hey, you guys want to rape the country? Here you go. What do you want to do? What do you want to take? What do you want to invest in? But I told my Mexican friend, so he thinks they're not going to do hot war in Mexico. But I said, okay, but think of it. These globalists are psychopaths. So we have to have different scenarios. So according to that one scenario, if they can get what they want already from Mexico, they don't need to do a hot war. Okay, I get that. Makes sense. That's maybe one scenario. But these globalists are psychos. So maybe they want chaos. And so maybe they want to pop off a hot war in Mexico. So just on those final points, Mexico, things can pop off here. Maybe. Cuba and then Venezuela. But I think we have to be careful because, they've had historically things blowback, right? When they tried regime change in Cuba, which failed Bay of Pigs, when Kennedy didn't go all the way. And so are they really, going to do it in Venezuela?
This is an opportunity, though, where China's probably not going to react that far away, and Russia is on its heels. There's no way Russia can react.
No,
so it would be an opportunity.
Russia, I was making this point. Russia and China, more so Russia, they threw their allies to the dogs. Gaddafi in 2011, Francis Boyle, who I've interviewed.
They just can't do it.
They can't. So if they couldn't defend Gaddafi in Libya and Assad in Syria, I mean, forget about Maduro in Venezuela. He's on his own.
So this would be their opportunity. However, I still think there's a chance of a hot war with Iran, which would be a two-front war. But you are very observant, Hrvoje, because in Monday's Wall Street Journal, there's an article, How Venezuela's Leader Guards Against Coups. Strongman has prevailed in efforts to unseat him. Foes are purged and jailed. So I don't know if this article is a psychological thing that is telling the military there, do not... No, I mean, why would they write this? What could the point be? I mean,
I think it's pretty, it's not really being hidden, is it, what's happening? They seem to be saying, now's the time to do your coup.
Yeah, I guess so,
We're here for support, and if you don't do the coup, then maybe it's going to get worse for you guys.
Yeah, it could be. I'd have to reread the article with that in mind. I usually pick up on that, but I just couldn't figure out why they were writing something demoralizing. However, it also poses a challenge to those guys because it keeps saying these guys are running scared. They're running scared. The generals have no balls kind of thing. Maybe it's, they're pretty good on their psyops.
Yeah, I just want to add also an important point to add on, to sprinkle on to all of this. The cultural capital America has now. If it was the left in power, it'd be more difficult. But because it's now Caesar, Trump, MAGA mythological emperor Trump, American Empire 2.0, Monroe Doctrine 2.0, it's like the channeling the ghost of Teddy Roosevelt. I think if they did it, they'll get away with it tacitly. If it comes to the U.S. populace and Pete Hegseth again, I saw yesterday. If you guys saw, he's doing all these cosplay videos. So he just did another video of a Top Gun. So he was flying in a jet, and it's like a movie trailer for Top Gun, and it's just kind of like, again, you have to factor that into your.
It's hyper reality. It's what Mike's saying.
Hyper reality. Days of
that's
Noah.
crazy.
Have you seen Days of Noah? The Christian is a massive DAYZ of Noah, big channel. He's really good. He uses the term hyper reality.
Wow, interesting. So, well, that also brings us to Argentina, where that guy is like a quote libertarian with crazy hair. Minute one, I was like, there's no such thing as a libertarian. Like, this isn't real. This cannot be real. And it was in the news today because I guess they're on their heels and the U.S. is swooping in. I don't know if you want to give us a recap of that, Mike, and if I see anything else in the paper, you can tell me.
I lost a few listeners when I didn't get on the Javier Milei's libertarian train, but I did an episode where I compared the things he was implementing under the banner of libertarianism with the IMF austerity measures of Greece under a socialist government during the Eurozone crisis. And it was literally page for page the same set of things. He was saying, oh, we're cutting it to reduce the budget and to reduce the size of the state. But of course, in Greece, it was like, no, we're doing this because you're full of debt. We're not going to allow you to default. We want you to remain trapped in debt and to take more loans off us. And then we can sell off the national assets to the rest of the world, which is precisely what happened. And it's what's happened in Argentina over the last year. I think now Israel controls a significant amount of the water over there. They're privatizing the water. And so what's happening right now is the obvious is the currency crisis that Milei was supposedly going to stable the peso. No, it's collapsing again. And the US has bailed them out to the tune of 20 billion, and they're going to bail them out again. But Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, and also Donald Trump have had some revealing tweets saying, well, it depends on the policies that they implement, which basically means you better give us access to, this is how I interpret it, is you better give us access to those natural resources because Argentina's got, lithium supplies and
uranium.
It's got a whole range of commodities. And remember, Argentina's gold got sent out of the country as well. It just disappeared out of the country. We don't know where it actually is right now. So I always said it looks like a looting, an IMF looting of the nation. The libertarians have got egg on the face, which I said they would do.
That was the point, to not really be libertarian, do it as stupid as possible so that it was doomed to fail and discredit libertarian free market. This is not free market stuff. It's ridiculous.
Again, it was just a pantomime, right? A guy with a chainsaw running around with the crazy hair, doing rock concerts.
In a leotard.
Yeah. So anyways,
so a couple more things on that.
And he's another one of these like unmarried, no children. I know that he cloned his dog, like he was in love with his dog, but I looked at some old news interviews with him and basically it was like, oh yeah, I'm totally believing in, this genetic engineering and modifying and what we can achieve in the future with transhumanism. So he's completely on the same page as all the other globalists. And anyways, it looks to me like the country now is in some seriously deep water with the financial situation, which they already was. They're the biggest IMF debtor. I think they owe something like 280 billion. And it's going to be filled with more loans and they're going to privatize the entire country and it'll get sold off.
So I want to make a point about the privatized, but I remember in Creature from Jekyll Island, which I'm sure you both have read, I think the example of how it works was Argentina. And since I read that book, or at least since that book has been published, I've seen it actually happen in Argentina several times since he used that as an example where they get into trouble for whatever reason, probably, IMF loans or whatever. And instead of when they come in with the bailout money, they don't forgive the loans. They don't give them a fresh start. They give them more loans so that they're always on that tether. And in this case, there's a couple of little details about the loans. And as far as privatize the whole country, I don't like that expression because it would be okay if they actually did that in a free market arm's length way. You would actually get the NPV or like the fair market value for some of this stuff and pay off the debt. But like if you look at Mexico's telecom, when they quote privatized it, there was basically one buyer and he got quite a bargain. And now he's one of the richest men in the world, if I recall that story correctly. But so what they're doing with they're giving them $20 billion of currency support, which Mike, I wanted to ask you if you could explain that. And the other thing they're doing is they're giving them $20 billion of loan guarantees under the condition that they use it to source their electronics, their computer and stuff like that from U.S. companies rather than from China. And when you start, and literally in the article, it was like, because MAGA. But to me, we are a service economy. So the transactions and the fees that are related to those, the service transactions, are the payola. So like doing that, who is getting the fees on that money? Who is the winner of those businesses? Who's getting kickbacks from that? We're interfering in a trade for the benefit of individuals, no doubt. But anyway, I wanted to understand the currency support.
Yeah, basically what they're doing is the currency's in free fall, so they're buying it back with US dollars. And when they gave the first 20 billion, I think within a week they'd blown like 40% of that 20 billion and the currency was still in free fall. It's literally burning money in that sense. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is the other model in terms of how to deal with the IMF. The biggest debt to the IMF in 1999 was Russia. They were the largest debt. So they was in Argentina's role. And what Putin did back then was he nationalized the oil and gas companies. The biggest gas company there was owned by the Rothschild family. He kicked them out. And I think it was Khodorkovsky who was like the shadow owner, but behind him it was the Rothschilds. So he kicked them out, nationalized it, said, you haven't been paying taxes, here's your bill. If you don't pay it, we're keeping it. Obviously, they didn't pay it. And then he used the profits from the rising oil price over the next 5 years to pay off the IMF debt in full. And that is the last thing that they want. They don't want you to pay them off. Now, I'm not saying Putin is somehow a hero. I'm just saying that was the other model, was to take your natural resources back from Western corporations and use the profits. So that's not what's happened in Argentina. And like you said, the privatization word, again, it's a lazy kind of catch-all term. Actually, what we're talking about is, are they being given fair compensation? If not, then it's a looting. It's either the privatization word could be changed with looting. It really depends. The same thing happened in the UK when they privatized all of the utilities. It was found out like a decade later they were sold for like pennies on the dollar. Everyone was like, yeah, these were terrible deals for the country. So who gets to decide what we sell them for?
Russia had a similar thing where it's kind of complicated when the Iron Curtain fell, but it made a lot of oligarchs to have that. But isn't it just well known that you cannot prop up a currency in free fall? I have to wonder about that 20 billion. Like, in what form was it transferred to whom and who benefited from that? Because 20 billion should not be enough to prop up a currency of a big country like that.
I'm just wondering, though, if, again, the plan is to places like Argentina will collapse and the currency, and then, hey, what's the solution? Stable coins.
There you go.
About to say, Argentina's adopting stable coins really quickly, the citizens, because it's so much easier to get your hands on stable coin than it is real dollar. And they see it as the same thing. So maybe what we're seeing is actually a part of a process to just rapidly expand the use. Because if you're an Argentinian, your currency's in collapse, you can't get your hands on dollar, and the stable coins you can, what's going to happen? Millions of Argentinians right now are buying up stable coins.
And they used to use dollars. So in their mind, like, they probably know how to convert dollars to pesos or whatever in their sleep. Do you remember they used to use dollars?
Oh, yeah. I think I had a friend who lived down there, and they had dollars in the bank account, and then they just stole them overnight. They just they converted them back to the local currency.
Happens.
So people are now looking for a get out. And I think with the stable coin, they think, I can hold this privately. The bank can't confiscate it like they could dollars. So yeah, that's what I think this could be about. Maybe it was designed to be this way, to expand the stablecoin usage.
Can I just add on this, just to share my screen real quick? Just before getting to that, my clip of my interview with Corbett, this clip went semi-viral, and someone quote tweeted it, because I asked him when we were talking about how BRICS is, there's no difference. East and West, it's all the same, right? Multipolarity it's like Democrats and Republicans. They're all down with one world government. Someone quote tweets and says, Bitcoin fixes the Western and BRICS panopticon, I quote tweet saying, "What if Bitcoin is the panopticon?" One of my followers, great X account, Kill Your Television, is Christian, says, "I really wish everyone would consider this possibility." And then Brent, what's his face? Santiago Capital, Brent, you know his last name? Johnson. There it is. I missed it. So he just published this today, and unfortunately, it's behind the paywall. I wish I could just buy this post. Substack should work on that. And so this is why I've been on the fence for years. So I've been saying the narrative is that from the East is the dollar's going to collapse, the West is going to collapse. But he makes the opposite case. He just published this, The Rise of US Dollar Stablecoins, Empire by Code, and that this is actually going to launch America further as a world empire. And some Christians are saying, if you think of the market, the Revelations, the beast, there's two beasts that are depicted towards the end times, and that this beast takes over the entire planet, and who can war with him? He's unstoppable, just absolutely crushing the planet. So this is what I've been on the fence. I've been saying it can go either way. I can see this happening. So the rise of US dollar stablecoins, what we're talking about Argentina, that's the pretext to bring stablecoins into Argentina and then the rest of the world. And then you see America, basically, maybe America is this beast of Revelation, that it's like this world empire that no one has ever seen, that no one can stop. They're crushing Russia. Look at Paul Craig Roberts just posted today, referencing Gilbert Doctorow, who I have interviewed as well, saying that Russia's being crushed. The Russian life is increasingly disrupted and inconvenienced by drone strikes deep into Russia. The constant frustration has resulted in growing percentages of the Russian population losing patience with Putin's limited, never-ending war. So anyways, I thought this was on point when it comes to stablecoins. And then he also commented right, on gold. He made an interesting point on gold. And he put up this chart. Here it is. He says the largest gold holders. He says actually it's the U.S. So
yeah, but that's official. Everyone knows that China, because we know the flows of gold that travel through Switzerland to China. China is the largest miner on planet Earth and has been for a long time, and they're also the largest consumer. So we know the Chinese numbers are complete bunk, and there's some pretty credible breakdowns of this, that it's around 40,000 tons. So the US is nowhere close to that. And that's if the US numbers are actually legit. The Chinese numbers are way more legit, because we know how much is going into the country and never coming back out. We know how much they're mining that they're never selling. The US is based off of audits that took place 50 plus years ago. So yeah. And, Brent Johnson was the guy who was with the dollar milkshake theory. So he believed that the dollar was just going to get more and more powerful. And because of this, the system was going to melt up through the dollar. That was 10 years ago. And gold was like $1,200. And the dollar was I think the dollar index was around 98. Today, the dollar index is lower and gold's around $4,300. So he was dead wrong on that, and that's nothing against him, but he was dead wrong on that. But with the stable coin thing, yeah, totally the US is going to try and reignite its monetary control, because with the dollar dying and essentially and everyone de-dollarizing, and just this month we saw foreign central banks now have more gold holdings in dollar value than they do the US dollar. Now, if the US dollar is the global international reserve currency and they hold more gold than dollar, that tells us something huge, that gold's the de facto reserve currency again. But if you can reignite the stable con and get this around the world, then the US could have a lot of control still. So I don't necessarily ascribe to the fact that the US is done for and its day in the sun's over. It's no, it's a declining empire, but how long did declines last? They can go on for decades and decades. And China, US is putting a pretty good fight up in terms of trying to get Europe to decouple from China, European dependency on American energy and imports after Nord Stream. So this is not clear cut yet. There's a lot of steps still to go.
And I would say, I think it's more like a three-headed monster. So you have the US, the UK, and Israel, and they have subordinated EU. And you see how the EU, Germany especially, capitulated in the Ukraine thing, which could not have been in its interest, with giving up the gas supplies from Russia that Merkel, for all of her flaws, did seem to defend. So it seems like there is that big dominance. And if you want to put it in like Christian moralistic biblical terms, it seems unlikely that China, which would be the counterpoise to that, is going to be the Christian champion, So if you want to think of it that way, it is pretty powerful, and we see what they're doing. And if they get away with the kind of domination they're looking for in Europe and South America and the Middle East, I think I don't know how Russia is going to make a comeback, because that would be if Russia will be converted as like an end time thing.
I've got an interesting point for you two guys that I'd love to get your opinion on. Obviously, gold up 55% this year, which is insane because it's money. So it's not meant to rise like that. It means that everything's collapsing versus gold.
Right.
But we know that China's got a lot of gold. So, of course, they had the collapsing housing bubble. So the gold price going up so rapidly, it's giving their citizens a huge uplift in spending power because they have lots of gold. China have told them, buy gold, and they bought gold and gold's gone up. So that's helping China. European central banks have been some of the biggest buyers of gold over the last 5 years. So they've got a lot of gold. They're happy the price is going up because the value of everything else is going down and their economies all suck. But now the US, like they imported 2,000 tons and nobody knows where it went, but I suspect they probably kept it knowing the price is going to go up. Scott Bessent said we need a weaker dollar. Well, look on the chart at the dollar versus gold. When the dollar
That's what it is.
Gold's going up. So does it mean that everybody now wants a higher gold price? And if so, that's a completely different paradigm to what we've lived through the last 50 years. That means the gold price could be used in some way to start essentially erasing parts of all of these all of these nations' debt. And that maybe is where we're heading to, which means the price goes much higher. It seems to me there is something happening behind the scenes with gold, and they are going to use it as a tool. So we will still have Bitcoin and stablecoin because I think that gets rid of inflation. Like if you've got a lot of money printing going on and people in the economy have all this speculative money, it's like, push it into Bitcoin, because when it goes into Bitcoin, the stablecoin companies buy treasuries. So that helps the US government. But when it comes to the debt level, Bitcoin doesn't do anything about that, but gold could do something about that. So anyways, it was just an idea that I've had floating around that maybe now we're going to see something different where gold is no longer like the enemy of the dollar. It's like we're going to use gold as well to help sort out the debts.
Yeah, just on that point, I was talking to someone from church and they were looking into buying gold or silver or whatever. And I told them that one of the big Mexican banks, I've purchased from them before, but they got all these different branches here, but they only have one branch in the entire city. The main central branch in the center of city that sells gold. They order it from the Central Bank of Mexico, and then they open up a menu. You can choose, a tenth of an ounce of a gold coin, a quarter of an ounce, half an ounce, 1 ounce, and then you come back in a week or whatever. And you pick up your gold, and then you run out of the bank before anyone can assault you
Right.
and steal it. And so, anyways, my friend, I told him like, you go to the central branch of that bank, and he told me, I was shocked. I'm like, are you sure? Can you check again? He said he's going to go that they don't sell anymore gold coins from the branch. So I'm not sure if this is for sure or not, but that's not cool. Like when I need to stock up on more gold in the future, where am I going to go? Now I can get silver ounces from Banco Azteca, right? But gold, I mean,
I have it delivered.
Maybe they were sold out with all of the physical buying, because there's been plenty of places in Europe that, like, I've got pretty good connections in some of the bullion shops, and they said, "Oh, we've never been busier. It's crazy. Like our supply, we have to keep resupplying. It's not that there isn't enough physical. It's not like there's a global shortage of physical. It's that they're buying so high, they're just not prepared for it. So maybe your friend went and found out, like, oh yeah,
it's an inventory problem.
I'll give an update later. I'll see how it goes. Yeah.
So I believe that the gold price has always been highly, highly controlled and manipulated. So if it's going up, I have to believe that it's been allowed to do so. Do we agree on that?
I agree with that 100%.
And then as far as, if I understand what you're saying correctly, because to me, the rise in the price of gold is simply collapse of the dollar. That's what it is. Like, because I used to try to look at, if even like when you look at the stock market and stuff, like those things move absolutely like 1-to-1 correlated, it seems to me. Am I am I wrong? Like the value of the dollar is
Well, I think that
big
makes sense because
driver.
as the gold is going up, dollar is going down, and at the same time, what are they doing? The third is bringing in the Bitcoin dollar stable coins to deal with the dollar going down. So it's the dollar 2.0 or Bretton Woods 3.0, as I like to say.
I mean, I'd have to really like sit with it and like marinate on it a little bit to get that intuitive sense of what exactly is going on. But if I understand what you're saying, Mike, that what they're doing is deflating the dollar so the debt is worth less, right?
In a sense, but what I think the goal is that, if nations have around 4% of GDP in gold, which most do, like most of the Western nations are above that, and most of the nations that didn't have that have accumulated it over the last 5 years. So it seems like there's some kind of behind the scenes agreement so that when the gold price goes up, it's equalized across the board. Like everyone's going to get something based on the size of their economy, at least in the West. So, and actually a few European central bankers admitted that. They said, oh, the unofficial gold standard is 4% of GDP. So it's like, okay, well, we know they're accumulating with purpose. And if gold revalues, whether it's because of market forces, manipulation, or simply because they all sit down like at Bretton Woods and say, listen, the system's screwed. Let's just revalue gold at a set price, which is really a devaluation of everything else, which is in a bubble because of low interest rates and debt. But anyways, the point is, if you get to about 30,000 an ounce, the debt to gold ratio for all of these nations is over 100. Sorry, the gold to debt ratio is over 100%, which means they could easily trim off 50% of the debt, 40%, 80%. Doesn't mean it's going to fix everything. There'd be massive inflation. There'd be huge consequences, but that's going to happen no matter what. It's a case of what's the best situation we can make of a catastrophic collapse to the current system. And the US with stablecoin and stuff, it's going to be used because as they increase their monetary supply to keep inflating the currency, which they need to do to prop up these bubbles because they don't want them to implode catastrophically, Bitcoin is a really nice outlet to stop that money that's coming into the economy, going into goods and services and causing runaway inflation. If it goes into Bitcoin, it's fantastic because what happens then? It gets packed in treasuries with the stablecoin companies, and then they create the fake dollars, and the fake dollars are used to buy Bitcoin. Now, when the Bitcoin price collapses down, they just extinguish the fake dollars. It has no impact on the real dollars because they're packed in treasuries. So it's a really nice mechanism to stop the inflation going to your goods and services. And the other thing that we're seeing is look at the oil price. The oil price has collapsed. So if you zoom out, the US is trying to stop inflation. They're doing there's probably a secret agreement with the Saudis and the OPEC countries to keep the oil price low. Even though we've got these massive narratives about Iran and oil shocks, like we should have oil price pretty high, like in the 1970s because of this, but that's not happening. So I think there's something else at play. I don't profess to know it all, but yeah, it does seem interesting. And I think the narratives around gold will probably be around for some time.
Mike, you're going to come on my show soon and talk about this. I'm going to go back and listen to this and like make you explain it all. And I'm also going to I hope that you've done some recent shows that'll help me kind of not be stupid when I have that conversation.
It's going to be an exclusive for you, actually. I haven't done any on this yet.
Oh, no. Okay.
I'm excited to speak to you.
I'm just going to try to keep up. I'll have an extra espresso.
I'll send you some articles.
Okay, that would be great because then I can take my time and like try to piece it together because it gets complicated. I mean, it's fake. It's a manipulation. It's meant to be hidden. And it's hard to unpack it, I think, if you can't just sit down and look at it like a math problem. So now you were going to talk about something. Did you say stablecoin? Did I miss this, Mike? Were you saying stablecoin is gaining popularity in Argentina and also in the UK?
Oh, actually, the Argentina thing, they're using America's stable coin. But what's interesting is in England, they were all about the central bank digital currency. And I always said, I think the central bank digital currency will turn out to have been a controlled op. And what you're going to get will be something else. And they'll say, well, at least it's not CBDC. That's precisely what happened in the US. And now in the UK, the Bank of England plans to issue their own stable coins. And I was reading through it and it was really funny in a sense because I studied the CBDC stuff they was putting out every time they did just to try and keep track of it. And it's exactly the same stuff they're planning to do with the stablecoin that there was with the CBDC. The first one is the Bank of England has indicated it would apply limits of £10,000 to £20,000 for individuals and businesses when the stable coins are released. That is precisely the same stuff they was going to do with the CBDC. So immediately you get a limitation on it, and it conditions you that, oh, this is exclusive. Like, oh, this is exclusive. We're only allowed so much of it. And yeah, it's the same stuff, just rebranded. And it's wild that, yeah, we're just seeing it all rolled out across the world. And in America, it was brought through by Trump. So I'm wondering if in the UK, people who are on the right are going to embrace it as well and say, oh, this is good because America did it. They was forced to get rid of the CBDC and go for the stable.
Some analysts, UK-based analysts like Alex Creel, who I've had on the podcast, he's been substacking about this. He's the first person I heard talk about it, but as well as others. So it's the pendulum swing. So they're winding up Adolf Stalin with the digital ID.
Stormtrooper.
It's gonna boomerang back, and who's going to bring in the UK Gov ID, stablecoins, Reform Party, Nigel Farage, or whatever.
Right.
So
of course.
that's the thesis, and it makes sense.
Keep an eye on his hair.
Yeah,
if he starts having crazy hair.
And the digital ID thing. I'm having a great guest coming up in a few weeks. He's based in the UK, who's going to break this down. But it's the digital ID thing is a red herring. They're like, digital ID, this app. No, we're going to fight against it. But it's like, it's total distraction. It's like, we're already swimming up to our necks in it. It's like the system. It's like what I say. The people who got the hots for China, who say there's no social credit system in China. Yeah. Okay, there isn't, but there's an algorithm ghetto. Okay, shut up. It's like in America, you have a social credit system. You have an algorithm ghetto. Okay, forget the social credit system, but it's like you have it, you just don't see it. It's our lives. If you're an American, like you live and die effectively by the social credits. You got your credit score. You got your
Uber. You can't use Ubers if you're not above a 4.
Yeah, your Social Security, what you get paid in taxes with how much money you make. It's like if I go back now to America because I've been away for so long, like I can't get a credit. I can't get anything because I've been away for so long. I don't have like a, whatever you do, W-2. I don't, because I'm self-employed or whatever. And like if I were to buy something, try to get a loan or like it's a no go. So, what was my point? So the point is that it's a patchwork interoperable system. So they're trying to tell us that this digital ID. So they're going to say, okay, we're not going to do digital ID. We're going to do like some Gov ID or something like that. That's what Palantir's job is. So I think effectively we're already in the digital ghetto, and it's modular, interoperable, and so they're trying to red herring us.
So
with the digital.
You're in it, but the doors haven't been closed yet. So yeah. So like Uber is a good example because they're saying, like, people will tell you, like people supposedly in the know, we're not going to have cars anymore. We're not going to have driver's licenses. We're going to have driverless cars soon, and basically won't even have garages, like soon. So, and I don't actually believe it's as soon as the people who are hyping it up, but the Uber credit system alone, like you get stars, and you have to have a lot of, like, you have to get close to 5 stars. I think they cut you off at like under 4, or people can reject you or whatever. It was the first social credit system I ever saw. And I liked it because I was like, wow, Uber drivers are so nice because they all want a 5. But if the transportation distills down to all Ubers all the time, that alone will be able to completely cut you off from any kind of outside communication. And the way people say AI is overblown, I do believe a big AI bubble is happening, but I don't think it's overblown in that it is going to be a lot more powerful and invasive and controlling than you think. So if you can't access it, if it doesn't like you, if you don't go through the rituals that you have to access everything, that stuff will be gone. But the number one thing that I know that this stuff is already real, and I've told you before, is when I came into this country, with my son who has Down syndrome, who was never out of the country before, and we came in without our passports, based entirely on facial recognition. That is a super tight border, And you're walking straight through at JFK or whatever, don't even have to slow down.
And just on that point, Emma, there was a major article. It was good actually, from Pentagon Times or Pentagon Post, one of those, rags. But on Amazon and how they're working, they're going to be now greatly decreasing employee numbers. They're trying to that last mile. They're trying to automate everything, and so Amazon here in Mexico has been providing a lot of jobs, right? And so one of my friends the other day says he just got signed up with Amazon and is a delivery driver, and what did he say? He gets, like, for 3 hours a day, he gets 1,000 pesos, which is like was like $50 for 3 hours of work. For Mexican standards, if you add that up for the month, it's actually not. It's like $1,000 a month, which is not bad for 3 hours a day. But they're going Bezos now. Their project is to go to that last mile and get rid of human.
Here are
workers.
the drones. The number of drones in the U.S. is expected to reach 3 million soon, while Ukraine aims to produce over 2 million small drones annually. Additionally, the U.S. Army plans to manufacture upwards of 10,000 drones per month starting next year. So that's your last mile. But I didn't want to forget some of the other kind of more salacious things that you had on your mind that came across your screen, Hrvoje. Did we talk about Prince Andrew giving up his titles? I think there's anything to that other than, I mean,
I don't have any deeper insights. I just caught that news. I'm going to share my screen again.
But it was an Epstein thing. And
Epstein
what else is going on with Epstein?
Prince Andrew giving up his royal title after talking with King Charles III. When I think of King, I think of Metallica's song from the Load album, King and Nothing, at the end of the day.
Yeah, Chucky 3, baby. Chucky 3.
Yeah, Chucky 3. So I found, that's pretty wild. And then there was apparently Virginia Giuffre, however you pronounce her name. She's Giuffre, from the grave. Posthumously, her book was published, Nobody's Girl, a memoir of surviving abuse and fighting for justice.
What a psyop, huh?
She names Ehud Barak as her Epstein abuser, former Prime Minister of Israel. And then this just dropped. John Adams, he's in Australia. He's got a big following, economics guy, but he apparently uncovered, so this is ABC Australia news channel, radio, whatever, from 1975. There's a pedophile recording that ABC Australia played. I haven't listened to it yet, but I think it has to do with politicians are just normalizing pedophilia. And he just released on his X, it was taken down from YouTube, but he just released a recording, and Australian authorities seem to be coming after him. So I thought that was pretty wild, and I've got some. If you guys got any other thoughts on that, did
you ever hear the rumors about Nicole Kidman's father? That he was a child psychiatrist of the elites, and his job was to keep their mouths shut. This is just a rumor I heard, but it was. And then he died on White Balloon Day because adults were speaking out about their experiences. He died kind of mysteriously, falling down the stairs or something. So that was actually a pretty compelling story, that there is a system in place where there is an elite pedophilia. Because I'm skeptical about, not skeptical, but I never really took the bait on the Pizzagate thing. I know there were dossiers under Margaret Thatcher's regime. I know there's a lot of things like that happened. But I didn't just fall in. I always felt like the pedophilia thing was a way to hijack the right to life movement for the Republicans, that they knew that if they could get people to be a one-issue voter, they could get away with all these other conservative things that they could abandon, because people would just vote against child abuse. So I didn't follow it that much, but that was an interesting layout of how it really works. They have people keeping an eye on these kids. Maybe they turn them into serial killers sometimes. Maybe they turn them into actors sometimes. But in any case, they have to keep their mouths shut. And Australia was like a hotbed of it, I thought.
Yeah, and I guess the final news real quick I had, which I thought was important. Just world government stuff, but Parag Khanna, who's the globalist technocrat who's written books on technocracy in America, he gave a 12-minute talk for Wall Street Journal called The Asian Worldview. But I found it, again, you got to be watching these guys to see, they're telling us which way the wind is blowing.
Absolutely, yes.
And in his talk, he effectively said there won't be like this bifurcated new Cold War or World War III. Instead, his exact comment was overlapping regional clubs. So I'm viewing the road to world federation, world governments it's like this spider's web. So the humanity, 8 billion of us, are in this spider web or series of spider webs, and all that the globalist spiders keep doing is just weaving these overlapping asymmetric webs continuously over us. So it's like one web. So it's not like this is centralized top-down world government. At the end of the day, effectively that's what it will be. But through this sort of network and regional clubs, there's that. And I always say it's convergence to global governance. Anthony Sutton and others talk about convergence of East and West. And our friends over at Lucifer Publishing, Lucis Trust, in their latest newsletter, get this, they're talking about the East-West integration convergence. So Ellis Bailey's Theosophic Luciferian Satanist, Satan, Lucifer is the Christ, Jesus inversion. They actually say whether it is in the East or the West, the path to freedom in the social context involves a steady transition from the individual mindset to that of the collective, the Borg. And they talk about Xi Jinping and Xi Jinping's new world government initiative. And effectively what they're talking about here is the East and West. How can we get East and West to converge into this world collectivist state? And so, and one more out of Australia, we're talking about Australia, some mysterious unknown object crash lands in Australia. Experts scrambled to identify its origin, and I'm joking. Has finally, the star has fallen from heaven. Lucifer, that's a quote from the Bible. The star has fallen from heaven, and they're going to do the fake alien contact, and let's get this show on the road. Let's get it all over with. It's become tiresome. I demand better psyops.
I love that expression. I have to. And then we'll say goodbye. I wanted to just say I had been seeing that regional hegemony as a theme, like I mentioned earlier, like straight from when Biden started. I really saw it coming down when I believe he assassinated Moise in Haiti, and then he sent Kamala Harris down to the America's meeting to like bank the poor and all that. I could see it happening. But in today's article about Rubio gunning for Maduro, there was a paragraph that I lifted, which I thought supported this idea of regional hegemony as the main goal in at least the medium term. Rubio has been laying the groundwork for an escalating pressure campaign on Maduro since he arrived at the State Department in January. His inaugural trip was a 5-country spin through Central America and the Caribbean, an unusual region for America's top diplomat. Behind closed doors, he often spoke to foreign officials in Spanish and made it clear that the Trump administration would reward allies in the region if they aligned with the U.S. So I feel like it's a real priority. They are getting that regional hegemony back.
And the plan will be, North American Union, Bukele probably leading the Central American Union, because he's the first that I've heard in Central America calling for an EU-style Central American Union. And there have been countless plans and projects for a South American union modeled on the EU, whether it's UNASUR or Mercosur.
Mercosur, I remember that one.
Whatnot. So, yeah, this is what I said earlier. They need to accelerate this, and going after Venezuela, I think, is part of that acceleration.
Absolutely. All right. I think that's a wrap, gents. Anything that we left on the table?
No, it was a great episode.
Super fun. Very interesting. And I can't wait to do my homework, Mike, and learn more about how it's all going to work.
I'm looking forward to that one, Monica. So cheers for the invite.
I just want to be able to keep up with you. Anyway, that was super fun. Thank you very much for joining us for another episode of Cognitive Dissidents. I am Monica Perez from The Monica Perez Show.
I'm Parallel Mike, and you can find me over on Substack, where I write a lot about finance and a little bit of geopolitics, a lot about goals. So if you're interested, you can find my content over there.
And Hrvoje from geopoliticsandempire.com, and you can support me through the Substack as a paid subscriber.